Let me talk a little bit about the sort of emotional trios that the Enneagram's 9 styles are broken up into. I have a slightly different way of formulating them, but when they talk about 2s, 3s, and 4s, for instance, are grouped together, and it's because they have certain similarities in basic inner tendencies, and a similarity in sometimes childhood backgrounds and views of the world and kind of habits of perception, as well as central things that they learn, things that are helpful in terms of how they grow and change. And 5s, 6s, and 7s are grouped together, and 8s, 9s, and 1s are grouped together. In 2s, 3s, and 4s, generally speaking, there is a tendency to get confuse yourself with your self-image that is much more pronounced than it is with other styles. There's a tendency within that to play roles and not to identify with a socially defined role that's outside of yourself, and to at times be unsure, especially when you're at your most defended, who you are, whether you are your role or you are someone else. And so within that identification, there's a kind of confusion between seeming and being. There's a kind of confusion between my appearance and who I should be versus who I really feel myself to be deep down. And within that confusion, there's often a background that the person comes out of where their emotional self was somehow felt rejected, either by their parents or early life circumstances or how they understood the world. And there is sometimes if you carry this forward in time, what the person has a tendency to do is reject themselves. And they are self-rejecting in the sense that they reject their any kind of emotions or dimensions or needs that don't fit with the image that they are living up to and the role that they're playing. And in the case of 2s, it's specifically a role and an image of helpfulness to other people and interpersonal kind of traffic and commerce and kind of giving to get. In the case of 3s, it's living up to an image of excellence or an image of someone who is successful and someone who is well received by the world, whose accomplishments are well regarded. And they confuse applause essentially with being loved. And with the 4 style, it's living up to an image of someone who is unique and special and somewhat different. Even if that person is defective, even if it's an image of somebody who is different and tragically warped or deformed or something like that, there's still a kind of an attachment to an image and a confusion about that image and the difference between how that image should feel, how the person who has that, who looks like that should feel, and how I truly feel. There's a kind of paradox that runs through all these styles that essentially says, when the person's in the defense of it, in order to be loved for who I am, I must pretend to be who I am not. With 2s, 3s, and 4s, the tendency is to maybe see an image of the self and how the self should be, have a sense of playing a role in a way, and then off of that role have feelings that are occasioned by that role in a way. The example I use is if you imagine 2 different ways of skiing down a mountain. One way would be to ski down in a way where you're fully involved in the experience and you're really kind of into it, and you are absorbed in the act of skiing and the activity of skiing and the feeling of skiing, and as you are negotiating moguls and moving back and forth down the mountain, you're aware of the sound of your skis on the snow, and you can see the mountainside and the snow rushing by you, and you're very intensely involved, and you can feel in your legs and feel in your entire body involvement, and a kind of joy within it too, a sort of emotional involvement where you're really fully engaged somehow, and you are profoundly in the experience. And then there would be another way of skiing down a mountain, which would be self-conscious, where you were you began skiing down the mountain and you began thinking about how you must look in your new ski clothes and how cool this new outfit is and how expensive it is and how it's the best brand and how people must be seeing that because the logo for the brand is right across the right pocket. And of course your skis are the finest and most up-to-date skis there are, but over and above that you are skiing in a way that is just perfectly consistent with the way good skiers should behave. And you start thinking about the people who are down at the bottom at the ski lift who are all gathered there and what they would be thinking if they looked at you and saw your beautiful form and your elegant, cool new ski clothes, and how proud your first skiing teacher might be of how far you've come and so on. And there is in this second experience a quality of watching yourself. You understand? That is different from the total immersion and total involvement. There's a kind of observer that you have up here, or a kind of image that you're holding up here. Oftentimes it's a constructed image. It's up and to the right. And what you're doing is you're kind of comparing reality with that image and comparing your behavior with that image in a way that is meant, and then making adjustments within your feelings and within your behavior so that you're more consistent with that image. So in that confusion, there's a difference between how I feel directly and how I feel when I get images, when I get feelings that are bounced off of an image like that. And it's a crucial difference. If you ask somebody, for instance, well, how do you feel? And they look up. Oftentimes they are making an image and they're getting a feeling off of the image. And so it's different than how do you feel, and they look down and to the right and they go directly into the feeling. Also, there's a breathing pattern that's different. Usually when you're in a visual modality, you're breathing higher up in the chest, sort of like I am right now. And so if you ask somebody how they feel and they look up, their breathing may be sort of suspended or very light and high up in the chest. And if you ask somebody else how they feel and they go directly for the feelings, they'll look down and they'll belly breathe, or they'll sigh, in a way that represents a kind of transition from visual modality to a more kinesthetic sense of how you feel, kind of trying to get a handle on how you feel, trying to kind of grab a hold of it and really put your finger on what it is. Now that's more directly kinesthetic, and then the other is more derived kinesthetic. You might also, I call it sort of pseudo-feeling. It's like a confusion about feelings that runs through all these styles. How do I really feel versus how do I actually feel, and who am I? A kind of minor identity crisis that can run through each of the styles. A kind of ongoing questioning in different social circumstances. Well, who am I today? Who am I here? Who am I now? And so there is a preoccupation about identity, a kind of running theme, a kind of running concern under the surface about who I am rather than what I am. And it's something that the person returns to. That and a kind of attempt to find out how they really feel versus how they think they should feel. Does that make sense? So you carry some of these childhoods forward in time, and one of the ways that you might think about this, what 2s, 3s, and 4s do, is that they are, to the extent they're in the trance of their style or caught up in it, they are self-rejecting.